compilation they want to, you know, and that pisses me off. You know, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like arseholes having total access to my work.
Yeah.
You know, so certainly that was one lesson that I would have learned.
And you're not in control of this music?
None whatsoever. I've no say.
Who owns it?
Phil Coulter sold it to some crowd in America called Shanachie, whom I don't know.
Yeah. A record label in the States. And ideally you'd love to, I mean, the original members to own their own music and be able to put these, it'd be nice to put these albums out again and
well, what I would love to do would be to re-record all the 6 albums. That's what I'd like to do.
Yeah.
Just do them again.
Yeah.
But I don't get me wrong, I'm not kind of, whereas I might display a little bit of anger when you talk to me about it, I don't lie awake at night with burning resentment or anything, you know.
Sure.
I've better things to be doing, but it's a pity.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the important thing is that the music is made and it's there.
Yeah.
It's your music. And people can hear that.
Yeah, I'm glad that people have access to it, but, you know, they do real tardy things, like the way they reproduce the sleeves.
Yeah.
And they don't put in the sleeve notes, and they're just trying to cut corners all the time. And as for where the money goes, that's another one. But again, I'm not lying awake over it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I suppose if I had the chance to do it all again, the music would stay the same.
Yeah.
But other bits and pieces might be a bit different.
Yeah.
But in terms of the control, and in terms of the fact that Shanachie now own the product, in the early 90s, we were restructuring. I had split with my ex-partner, Bill Martin. We were restructuring the company. And in fact, the masters were offered to Christie. It was a situation where it was one of the assets of the company. Shanachie had been asking about acquiring the masters. We offered it to Christie. We couldn't strike a deal because, well, what was offered by the record label was assessed by them and indeed on the basis of royalties, etc., and potential. We couldn't come to a deal, but the offer was there, and it was maybe a year or so later when the Shanachie deal was signed off on. Shanachie then got the control of the albums.
You know, I was always the treasurer of Planxty until Paul Brady came into it, and I'm the person who writes to Shanachie and says, "Listen, you owe us money," you know, and it's like trying to draw teeth, you know. But I persist. I get angry. I get furious too. I get furious with record companies because they just don't, you know, you have to ask them for the money, always. They never send you a check, as they should, twice a year, or rarely, not in my experience.
The reality of the record industry is such that, again, when we go back to the early days of Planxty, trying to get the albums released in the United States, I can tell you there wasn't a queue up of major labels looking for Planxty. And the one label who got it, the one label who appreciated Planxty, one label who were themselves very keen on the whole acoustic world and world music. They were a couple of guys who had signed the likes of the Chieftains, Ladysmith Black Mambazo. These were guys who were doing things in music that no other American record label were doing, and they were very keen on Planxty. So we were glad to get a deal, but albeit a small and an independent label. Now, no label is perfect. They certainly made mistakes, and I wasn't thrilled with some of the artwork and things, etc. But you know, that's the chance that you take, and to have every artist, every producer, every songwriter would love to have ultimate control over his product. That's a luxury that very few of us actually ever have.
In late 1978, all 4 original members of Planxty reformed the group. Donald Lunny left the Bothy Band and brought with him the great flute player Matt Malloy, who later went on to play with the Chieftains. The second period of Planxty began with the album After the Break, recorded here at the famous Windmill Lane Studios in Dublin.
Here's a health to the reams of married life, the soft, the suds and blue. hearts through love and hate and starched in the washing soda too.
The first 3 albums have a lot of youthful energy about them, the novelty, etc. But for me, and I know I'm in a minority here, I prefer the second 3 albums because I think musically they're more intricate. We had evolved musically quite a long way by that time, and I just prefer the music. I think it's more interesting to listen to. But when I think of the times we had, I think 1972 1972 through to the end of 74 was magic. 74 till Brady joined the band was kind of a struggle, and then it was great for a while with Brady until we were just too tired to continue. Yeah. And 79 onwards, it was okay. I don't remember it as being I could be wrong, but I don't remember it as being it was certainly not 1972. Yeah. The music was better, but more was expected of us at that point. You know? I think it was more responsibility to do well, and when we didn't get the reaction we wanted, there was a kind of slight feeling of, with me anyway, of paranoia. You know?
The second period of Planxty stretched from the Reformation in late 1978 to their final demise in 1983. Over this period, a further 3 albums were made. After the break, The Woman I Love So Well and Words and Music. Although the music was dazzling, the spirit of being in the band wasn't quite there. It was always going to be impossible for Planxty to recreate the past. Records and live appearances became more sporadic. The Woman I Love So Well came out in 1980 and featured the additions of Noel Hill on concertina, Tony Lennon on fiddle, and Bill Whelan on Fender Rhodes. Their final release was Words and Music in 1983. Christy and Donal moved on to Moving Hearts, and Liam and Andy kept the Planxty name with a variety of lineups, performing live but never recording again.
Lie still, me little Musgrave, and hug me from the cold.
When I think of Planxty, or when you mention Planxty to me, it would be the early time that would always spring to mind. It was different. You know, I suppose we were a bit more road weary at this stage. Yeah. We'd been around the block a few times. Yeah. And I mean, I know it's 20 years ago, but we'd still been around the block a few times even then. So it didn't have the freshness or the vitality. And the tours were very, very arduous. Yeah. I remember that particular 1978-79 time, we did some crazy touring. Yeah. But the 2 hours every night was always pretty good, but the other 22 could have been difficult enough.
The original members of Planxty did squeeze in one more memorable performance at the 1981 Eurovision Song Contest. While Europe was celebrating the genius of Bucks Fizz, Planxty were quietly, elegantly supplying the interval performance with a unique piece of music by Bill Whelan called Time Dance. 14 years later, Whelan was back at the Eurovision with another piece of music spawned from Time Dance and called River Dance.
I'd like to remix those 3 albums, and I'd like to get paid for them. You know, so I mean, we did have the idea of re-recording them. But I don't think we could manage to do that because we're not the same musicians who recorded them in 1972. But it would be fun. It would be, well, there's that as well. But to re-record the old material, knowing exactly what the parameters were, I'd find that really interesting. You know, you might remember things from those 72 recording sessions by playing the same thing that you've long since forgotten. But then, maybe it's not a good idea.
With or without the constant speculation of another Planxty reformation some 20 years later, all 4 original members are still playing music around the world. However, no one is ruling out the possibility that they will perform together again in the not-so-distant future.
There's nobody longs for it more than myself and the other 3 guys. Yeah. But who knows? Yeah. Definitely, the time is right.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's go for it.
But we've something little bit different this time anyway.